Hello fragrance nerds, how are you? Welcome back to another episode of Making Sense Makes Sense, the podcast that is all about demystifying the wonderful world of fragrance. I'm Thomas Dunkley, esteemed fragrance expert and now 8 times Jasmine Award winning overachiever. That's right, I managed to pick up a total of 2 Jasmine Awards at this year's ceremony, held just at the end of April, and obviously I'm going to brag about it, so indulge me please. So I was shortlisted in 4 categories, but won for Best Visual Media for my Instagram series Smell Good for Less, which is all about guiding people on a budget to find original fragrances that cost less than £30, helping them avoid dupes, proving that you can smell good for less. Then I also won the Special Recognition Award for my Substack piece, Sense of Loss, which was all about exploring how grief and scent are linked, looking at the 4 fragrances my mother wore and how they helped me navigate grief after she passed away. This is a really special category actually because it's one where other people nominate you don't self-submit. So it was also incredibly emotional for me to win, as you can imagine. And I can't talk about it. People kept wanting to talk to me about that article and I was like, I can't talk about it, sorry. Anyway, that's enough about me and my accolades. Thank you for indulging me there. I really appreciate it. Let's just get on with the episode. This week I'm speaking to Jacob Grainger, perfumer and co-founder of NOSU. NOSU is this wonderful British brand that pairs visual art with olfactive art, with a few canny puns thrown in for good measure, which you will see in action in the interview. The fragrances are truly exceptional and I see really good things in the future for the brand, and I was really excited to get Jacob on the podcast to talk to him all about his process. We have a really good chat about how he became a perfumer, transitioning from the world of drinks, and how he and his partner Lucy collaborate on artworks. And of course, given that Jacob loves a pun, I do ask him what his favourite perfume pun is. So let's just get straight into that after a very quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Making Sense Makes Sense is sponsored by Carium. Walking into a perfume store can sometimes be an overwhelming and intimidating experience, with enthusiastic sales staff and a huge amount of choice. Or at least it used to be, because Carium are looking to disrupt and change how we explore fragrances in store. Carium represents the future of fragrance discovery, blending technology, creativity and emotion. It makes finding a fragrance feel like a personal journey, not a sales pitch, which is why I'm pleased to have joined them as a brand ambassador. Carium have partnered with 2 iconic London stores to make discovering fragrance an easy and interactive experience. The technology made its UK debut in June 2025 with an exclusive partnership with Thymian London, showcased in a Selfridges London pop-up. It's now a permanent feature at the Thymian counter, and customers can explore key fragrances in the range using Carium, the scent sommelier. But the Carium technology has been developed to work in all fragrance settings and launched last year at Parfum La Danse in Richmond, a boutique founded by acclaimed perfume critic Derya Turkan. Here, customers can explore a finely curated selection of fragrances across multiple niche brands, with Carium's innovative AI tech, powered by a large language model, guiding them in their discovery. You can find Carium's The Scent Sommelier in both stores, so why not pay a visit and let Carium help you discover your next favourite fragrance. Jacob, it's such a pleasure to have you on Making Sense Make Sense. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. And I've been wanting to get you on the podcast for a little while now because NOSU really stands out to me as a really unique fragrance brand. I think it's got a really beautiful and kind of striking visual identity, but also each of the fragrances are really distinct and unique. So I'm really keen to do a bit of a deep dive into the brand journey with you. And I know the brand is a relatively new brand. It launched about a year ago, but obviously you launched a year ago. A lot goes into that beforehand. So it feels strange to call it a new brand because I'm sure you've been working on it for a really long time, and I know you've been teaching yourself perfumery for about 6 years. Is scent something you've always been interested in?
I think I've always been interested in scent in terms of when I was a kid. I used to love gardens. I used to love helping cooking food and things like that. I remember when my parents would take me to gardens and taught me that you can sort of rub herbs between your fingers and you'd get the scent on your hands for hours afterwards. I was obsessed with it. I still can't walk past a rosemary bush or a sage bush and not do that now. So I've always been sort of interested in that, in terms of the sort of maybe the sort of tactile feel of scent as well.
So it's more the idea of the natural world of scent around you rather than being like an absolute fragrance nut.
Yeah. Obviously like perfumes, but in terms of growing up, I was very into just the sort of, I don't know, being in nature amongst, fragrant things.
I feel like you really sort of screwed me out of a great headline there, which was "Perfumer hates perfumes." That would have been really,
No,
really great
that would be
tagline.
that would be a strange profession to get into, wouldn't it? If you didn't like perfume at all. But
It would be, and you've robbed me of clickbait there. So thanks a lot for that for that, Jacob. So you've had this kind of interest in the natural world, interest in scent and smells. What inspired you to study perfumery? Because it's not an obvious thing to start doing.
yeah. Well, I used to work in flavor development for quite a few years, for sort of soft drinks, non-alcoholic drinks company, and then kind of realized that you could sidestep quite obviously into fragrance, which is similar in a way. Um, and yeah, that was when Lucy and I kind of discovered, we started making scented candles. And I remember looking on an ingredients website for perfume materials and kind of like, oh, okay, these are the sort of things you can get your hands on. Um, you know, and then sort of graduated into perfumery rather than candles, because it was kind of a bit less limiting in terms of things you could use and sort of things you could create in terms of scent.
There's also a bigger market for perfume, I think, isn't there? There's
Yeah,
a lot
yeah,
more
that as well.
opportunity, I think.
Yeah, definitely, and a lot less waiting around whilst you're making things as well.
Yeah, I can imagine because you have to do all lots of testing and things on burn testing, etc., with candles. And it's interesting you were working in the soft drinks industry before doing flavors as well, and you said there's some similarities. How
Hmm.
close are they in terms of developing a soft drink product and also which is obviously a flavor, and then developing a perfume which is a smell? Is there
Hmm.
overlap there?
I mean, there's a bit of an overlap, but I think flavor development is quite hard, but it's much easier than perfumery. Um, Mostly because I think we've all got a kind of initial understanding of flavor inherently. We kind of understand the sort of touch points of flavor in terms of what tastes good or bad or interesting and why. It's also kind of, I guess, visually easier to understand when you're eating and drinking things, the kind of cues that make up flavor compared to scent. Um, so yeah, and kind of when you're giving someone something to taste compared to something to smell, like I used to work with clients and developing kind of new flavors and tastes, they can sort of pinpoint why they don't like something or something like that. Whereas perfumery is kind of a bit more unknown when you're trying to get people to test things, unless they've got a lot of knowledge on perfume, like yourself. Then people find it more difficult to kind of reference that. And yeah, perfumery has a kind of a huge learning curve compared to flavor. A tiny amount of something added in perfumery makes something smell completely different, whereas a tiny amount in a drink, you probably wouldn't really notice that unless you were extremely tuned in.
Yeah, unless it was like arsenic or cyanide or something, I suppose. In which case,
you know the
you,
you know
you
the effects
notice.
then. Yeah.
I get what you're saying because I think perfume and smell is much more abstract, isn't it? I suppose
Mm.
is the thing. But do you think, having had that background in flavor development, you weren't starting from zero when you went into perfumery? You had some like baseline of skill.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I was quite there's a kind of, you have to be fairly methodical when you're creating flavors in terms of note keeping, in terms of being fairly precise and not haphazard, and just kind of assessing things and trying to figure out what is wrong with it. So yeah, I was kind of, it felt like a natural step into perfume.
Yeah, I can see that totally. And what was your process? What did that training look like for you?
I did a kind of introductory course online, which was sort of learning how to assess materials, and then it just became kind of buying lots and lots of different materials, weird ones, generally, diluting them down, and then kind of assessing them. So you'd sort of dip it in, see what it smelled like immediately, see what it smelled like after 15 minutes, and then over sort of increments and see how long it would last. That was, quite methodical in a quite kind of a fun way, but then also just blending things at different ratios. Do you know the sort of Jean Carl method? Jean Carl was a perfume educator and perfumer, and he sort of would teach you to to combine two materials in different ratios and see how they interact. So it was kind of that's how I kind of learned, but then expanding that by adding different materials into that and seeing how they'd react and things like that. So quite long process, but I think it was a good way of actually practicing and getting to know everything.
Yeah, because you're teaching yourself your materials first and foremost, aren't you? So
Yeah.
it's very methodical, as you say. I think that's a great word to describe it. How long before you felt confident enough to start making? So you'd done the baseline, the methodical, getting to know your tools. How long before you were like, okay, I'm going to start experimenting with creating?
I think I started experimenting with creating first, and then I realized you have to get to know your materials.
I think that's probably a common mistake. People get I want to do the fun stuff first, right?
Yeah. You blend 10 things together and go, oh, that doesn't smell good.
Why have I made soup? Why have I made soup?
Yeah, exactly. But then, that was kind of probably, I did that for a few months and was obviously trying lots of things together. But, and then probably after about a year, started working on a few different things. And then it took about 2 years to get these first three from sort of start to finish in terms of trialing.
Yeah, so quite a long time. And I suppose one of the real complexities and barriers around being self-taught and learning perfumery is access to materials, access to knowledge. It's an industry that's famously been very good at gatekeeping.
Yeah.
Did you find that was a barrier for you? And if so, how did you overcome it?
Yeah, gatekeeping is a good word. It's quite a secretive kind of industry. People don't really like to share how things are done, which is fair enough. Why would you? You kind of want to keep it to a certain group of people who can do it. But I did a lot of research on different forums and things like that. That's how I kind of learned it. And there are there's lots of different things online where you can learn about perfume materials. Base notes, I'm sure you've heard of base notes. Shout out to Grant for getting that online, because that was a kind of wealth of information. If you're learning perfumery, I'd just go on and sort of search that out. I used to just research that incessantly and read and take notes and try out things that I'd read about. Some online advice is quite bad, some is quite good, so you have to kind of figure out who's worth following. And then just practice. It was just, getting sort of to know the basics and just practicing quite relentlessly. Materials also quite hard to get in kind of the sort of quantities that you want with large scale perfumery. So that was just buying small amounts and practicing with that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's piece by piece approach, just sort of slowly methodical, getting yourself there. And you're right. I think there is good and bad advice online, so it's having to sift through that. But I think it's so great now that we're in a place where you can not only teach yourself perfumery, and I'm going to give you a compliment here, so just prepare yourself, because I know
okay.
But your fragrances are so accomplished in the sense that they feel like full, well thought out perfumes. Sometimes when I've smelled previously, I would say, going back 10 years, some work from self-taught perfumers, you can smell that there's a great idea in there, but it doesn't feel finished. And I think how great and encouraging that we're seeing people like you and other self-taught perfumers who are, creating at that level. So just receive your compliment.
Thank
you. Don't have to
that was nice.
Respond.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome. Enjoy it. But I think that shows how the world has changed, right? That the access is changing, because it's becoming, much easier to get that information and to get the materials and get the tools, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. I think, there's definitely a lot, there's a bigger focus on perfume as a whole nowadays as well. Like, even when I started like 6 years ago, it wasn't quite kicking off as much as it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, really picking up, which is really, really positive.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So you started NOSU with your wife, Lucy, and it was a collaboration. What inspired you to create the brand?
We we wanted to sort of create something that kind of merged our, let's say, expertise. Lucy's a texture artist and a set designer. She works on lots of commercial beauty shoots. So she does all the visual side of NOSU, including the sort of art pieces that she creates that are inspired by the perfumes. And I do all the scent side of things. So it kind of felt like a nice merging of worlds and different senses. And yeah, we wanted to make these kind of little mini sensorial worlds that you could step into. Yeah, they all have these kind of textural feel to them, which is, you know, a thing we wanted to try and get in terms of the scent, as well as the visuals, as well as the sort of, the art pieces. And the lids are quite tactile themselves. That was something we wanted to get perfect, basically. Yeah,
I think the visual identity of the brand we'll sort of come onto a bit later, but I think the lids are super cool, and I think it's a great example of how to take stock components and then make them look unique and cool without having to spend millions of pounds tooling new bottles and things. But we will get to that a bit later, I think.
Yeah.
So I love this idea of this collaboration of you have this artistic, this visual side, and then you also have the olfactory side. So you create obviously a fragrance, and you're saying Lucy then creates an artwork inspired by the fragrance. So I'm kind of intrigued about what's the kind of formative part for you for a fragrance. Where does that concept start? Is it just an experiment with scents, or are you sitting there thinking of a name and a concept first? How does it usually happen?
It's a bit different for all the three that we've got, but I often will come up with, I'll be sort of inspired by a certain material, or occasionally I'll come up with a what I think is a clever name that I think has to be made into a perfume, and then build a sort of brief out from that. But yeah, it's often sort of inspired by a kind of snippet of an idea of, a place you can be, or sort of directly just by a certain material that I've discovered and loved.
Okay, so it's a real mixture. So it could be just an essay on a material, or you could already have a good name that you're sort of creating a concept for, and then you present the final version to Lucy, or is she sniffing along as you go and thinking? How does that work?
She's sort of sniffing along as we go. She knows the sort of idea behind the scent and the sort of brief that I've made, but she'll sort of, when it's got to its final final scent, she will sort of take it away and smell it and see what she kind of feels in terms of the textures and in terms of the ideas behind the scent, basically, and try and make this artwork that sums it up, just to give a sort of extra visual element to the scent.
Yeah, I think it really helps make it more tangible in a way, I think, because again, as we say, fragrance is so abstract. To have something visual, whether it's a color or a texture, can really help you get an idea for what that fragrance might be.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Do you ever have disagreement? Do you ever think, doesn't quite align, or are you like, no, this is great? I mean, it's difficult to get. I'm sure. I'm just staring for trouble, aren't I, really?
We've kind of, we like to sort of stick in our lanes, if you know what I mean. But if one of us kind of goes, no, I definitely don't think that's the way, then we'll say. But if not, it's kind of our own sort of, our own section to play within,
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that must be quite exciting in a way to not know what the visual interpretation is going to be, and then you see it and you're like, oh, okay, it may not have been in my mind how I saw it, but how fascinating and beautiful that it is, how you interpret it. Because
no, definitely.
I say this a lot when I speak with perfumers. It's like you create the work, and once you've created it, it's no longer yours. And I suppose it's almost no longer yours before you release it, because it's already been interpreted in a way, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. No, that is a good way of looking at it. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. But yeah, no, it's quite an exciting thing to see how Lucy comes up with a visual of something.
Yeah, I really like that. I think it adds an added dimension to it. I'd love to talk through and smell the fragrances, because I think they are so unique and interesting, as I've said, but also we're talking about these fragrances, and it'd be good to kind of bring a bit of life to them. So I think the first one I'd like to try is Been Trying to Meet You. What was the inspiration for this one?
This was basically inspired by, I first smelled Hey Absolute. I'm not sure if you've probably smelled Hey Absolute, and it's and it was to me just one of the most beautiful materials that I'd smelled. It's very super comforting, super nostalgic. That might be because I grew up in the countryside, but kind of very golden, very warm, but has this kind of harsh tickliness to it, if you know what I mean. As if you're kind of crushing up seed heads. And so been trying to meet you was just basically wanted to kind of capture the smell of hay bales on the breeze, kind of wildflower meadows, blossoms, and this kind of sweet, hazy dustiness that you get in the air in sort of bucolic countryside feelings.
Yeah, it's very much a summer evening. Like the sun hasn't set. It's very warm and glowy, laying in a field, possibly some lavender nearby. It feels like it would be quite an arty film, where someone's just doing lots of like shots of someone fumbling grass and that kind of stuff. It's that kind of soft sighing, breathing. Yeah. It's got that. It's so relaxing. It's really beautiful.
Thank you. Soft focus.
It's soft focus. It's Vaseline on the lens a little bit. Is there any lavender in it?
There is a bit of lavender. Yeah. There's lavandin and there's lavender.
Yeah, it gives that nice rich warmth of lavender, almost a little bit sort of toasted. So beautiful. Now, I know that I'm not the only fan of this because Luca Turin, who I'm sure everyone will know, is probably one of the, or if not the most esteemed fragrance critic, popped into the pop-up perfumery and said that this was the best hay perfume he'd smelled to date, calling it bright and sunny with a lovely candied heart. And he was actually super complimentary about all of your fragrances, saying that they all have a contemplative, restful quality and a wonderful quality of drawing you in with unexpected twists and feints. I mean, that's got to feel good, right? That's got to be...
No, that felt quite good. I mean, yeah, that felt good. I can't lie. And who am I to argue with Luca Turin? Who am I to argue with that?
No. I mean, if he'd said something bad, you could have argued with him. But
I would have argued with it, But in this case, I kind of defer to him. Yeah, I defer to him on this. No, I mean, it was quite... we were very shocked when he turned up at the pop-up. We kind of were taken aback by that. But when he smelled them and wrote about them, it was... And the pop-up in general, it's kind of... I was very taken aback, happily. But yeah, I suppose I agree.
Yeah, I agree that my perfumes are wonderful. Well, good. I'm glad. I'm glad that you feel that one.
But no, I mean, look, it's nice when anyone says nice things about perfumes, but it was quite a shock when he kind of turned up and smelled them as well.
So we started with this one because I think it's the most... I don't want to use the word accessible because I think they're all quite accessible. I don't think there's anything scary in here, but I think this is the one that probably most people would smell and be like, I love that. They do get a little bit stranger as we go, in a good way. Yeah. So let's move on to hides. So this one, hold on, where I've lost myself. Where am I? Yeah. So hides to me feels like the most get my words out. Hides to me feels like the most introspective of the three. And I love the notes that you've got, notes of wooden shack and fur. Talk to me a little bit about hides and those interesting notes that you've listed.
Yeah, so hides, it's based around being in a hide where you can a place where you can sit and watch wild animals. So it's all about being in a wooden shack, sort of surrounded by undergrowth and moss, and you can sort of observe these wild animals olfactorily as they move around you. I just got some kind of unusual materials in terms of mango leaf and raspberry leaf and osmanthus to get this kind of odd animalic sort of leatheriness, and kind of I want it to be a kind of uncertain animal, kind of just a kind of what's the word I'm thinking of? I want it to be kind of a feeling of just, fur and kind of uncertainty in terms of animals around you.
So you're staring out from your hide, you can sense a presence or partially see something, but you're not quite sure what it is. It's a little bit of unknown. there is a lovely subtle fruitiness, which is in my mind, it's like a fruitiness with the saturation pulled right down. So it's not like a
Mm,
vivid juicy fruit. It's almost like the green skin of a fruit, which I think is really
mm,
interesting in this. And I do get that leatheriness that you say, and it is almost like a skin like leatheriness.
mm.
It's really odd in a nice way. It's odd in a sort of trying to piece it together. But wearing it, I really like it when you wear it, especially on a cool day. You get this
Mhm.
kind of I don't know, this warmth around you. It kind of really warms up on the skin. It's a really interesting one. Um,
This one in particular, doing these sort of trade shows and the pop-ups, it's quite interesting with this one particularly how different people smell very different things with it. Obviously, that's kind of common with everything, but in terms of people smelling sort of very fresh green, kind of fruity, or super animalic and leathery, or kind of very furry and farmyardy, and it smells very different on different people's skin, which is which was quite. We did lots of testing with our friends and things, but that's kind of a small kind of a window of people. So it's very interesting to see people's reaction to this one in particular.
oh, okay. So when people have really varied reactions when they smell
Yeah,
this. Hmm.
obviously they
I
all
like
love it.
that.
It's
Of
yeah.
course. I mean, who are they to argue with Luca Turin? Come on, they can't. Um, so let's move on to Sane No More, which I would say is probably the boldest in the collection, and I think a good example of your love for puns because you do love a punny name.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about Sane No More.
Mm.
What is it? What have you done here?
Say No More is all about seining, which is old Scottish hogmanay kind of New Year's tradition where they would burn juniper wood in the house, fill the house with smoke, and then open all the doors and windows to sort of let in the fresh air and welcome in the new year. So it's very smoky to start with, which I think is why it's the boldest initially, but it kind of very smoky, very juniper tar heavy, lots of incense, and then it becomes more kind of fresh and airy and kind of ember, sort of symbolize the fresh air and the kind of remaining embers on the ground.
It's really fascinating because smoke is probably my least favorite genre because I find a lot of the time it can be quite salty and I feel kind
Mm.
of a bit parched if I'm wearing something really smoky.
Yeah,
What I enjoy about this is it's a very specific cold grey smoke. It's like a
mm.
mineral smoke. It's not that warm, ambery, tarry, leathery smoke. It's like a icy cold. It's like smoke on an icy cold day.
Yeah,
Reminds me a little bit of when a real specific memory of mine is I grew up in a little village, and lots of people, like my parents, had a wood burning stove,
mm.
and so you'd walk around on like these sort of cold, misty days, and you would smell chimney smoke. And I
Yeah,
like that. It's not exactly that, but it kind of gives that kind of that grey cold smoke on a
mm.
cold day. I really like that. It's really interesting. But the juniper I get a lot more on the skin than I do on the strip, and that gives it almost this kind of, I don't know, herbaceous sort of liveliness in a way. It's a
Yeah.
really interesting fragrance. I can spend a lot of time sniffing it and trying to work it out.
Mm.
Now, as a perfumer, do you gravitate when you wear them? Not thinking, I know that I'm not going to ask you which is your favorite because it's like picking children, I know, but do you have one that you gravitate to more to wear that you found a bit more of a signature, or are you just kind of pretty equal with them all?
I would say probably where I've been trying to meet you the most. Um, just because it's kind of quite. I probably took the most time creating that one just because I wanted it to be the most kind of precise, nostalgic scent, basically. I wanted to get the sort of super hazy, summery feel of growing up in the countryside. So I think that's probably one I wear the most. But yeah, like you said, I love them all equally, but that's the one I
Mm.
kind of will wear on a sort of everyday kind of scent.
Yeah, you absolutely nailed that hazy summery feel. It's really,
Thank
really
you.
beautiful. I think
Thank
if
you.
if I not that you asked, it's hard for me to pick a favorite, but for me, I
What's
think
your favorite, Thomas?
no, I'm not expecting you to ask. I'm
No, at
giving you
all.
my unsolicited opinion. But let's not forget my podcast, my rules.
Mm.
It's a real toss up for me. I would think I like them all, and I've actually the great thing is you very generously sent me a lovely travel size of each one, which is really really great. And I've been wearing them on and off over the last 6 months or so. I think however long
Mm.
I've had them, and I gravitate to been trying to meet you and hides the most. I would say saying no more. I like, but probably is not
You wouldn't wear
my
it.
vibe so much. Yeah, which is nice, and I like that in a collection. And I often say to perfumers, it's kind of a good sign to have a collection where you smell them and go, oh yeah, I think they're all interesting, but I'd wear these ones because my taste isn't the same as everybody else's, so it's nice to have that variety. I think so.
Yeah.
Those two, but I probably go to. I probably my favorite's probably been trying to meet you as well because it's just I'm a country boy too. What can I say?
Yeah, exactly. No,
Which is which.
a lot of people from different countries have said it's very nostalgic for their kind of childhood.
Mm.
So it's quite nice to. It's always nice to hear. I kind of feel like I've done what I was trying to do with it.
And that must be one of the nice things about creating art in this way is
Mm.
that you do get people sharing stories and emotions and feelings with you about their fragrances, and that can be a little bit heavy at times. But I suppose as an artist, is that really rewarding to see that when you're at those trade shows having those conversations and people say, give you a reference point or a memory or something?
Yeah, no, it's quite amazing seeing people have kind of visceral reactions to things is quite yeah, it can be quite moving. You can see them kind of processing almost in front of you, which is quite interesting to see.
Yeah, it is. And we talked earlier about how NOSU is kind of a brand of two halves. You have the olfactive side and then you have the visual artistic side.
Hmm.
And like I said, it really strikes me as a well thought out brand visually, which I know is really hard to do when you are starting a small brand. I think what you've done is you've been really, really simple. And I know you've refined over time your bottles, but they're simple, but they're also very bold because you have these gorgeous chrome effect caps that make a real statement. They really are really eye catching and really tactile. How long
Yeah.
did you spend, working together, forming the whole visual identity of the brand?
A long time, a very long time. They kind of the lids themselves were a long time. We took a long time kind of trying to figure out the shape, the size, and the finish in terms of how chrome. Should it be a different sort of texture, things like that. But yeah, wanted it to have this kind of abstract. Here we go. Abstract nose kind of shape from different angles. Um, but yeah, it took a long time to get it kind of to its final design, and then it took even longer to find someone who would make the design for us in kind of small enough quantities that we could make it could be feasible for us because we were just starting. We couldn't afford to and didn't want to buy kind of 5,000 lids and spend tens of thousands of pounds on that. So yeah, we had to be fairly resourceful, but yeah, we wanted it to be perfect. So it took a lot of sampling and toing and froing to kind of make it how we were happy with, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes a real impact. And like as I said to you earlier, I think it's a really good example of how you don't have to spend tens of thousands of pounds
Mm.
to make something unique. You don't have to tool a bottle. You can just do something. Well, I don't want to say simple because it's not a simple cap. It's a really unique piece, but you can do something different. And I suppose that's where Nosu stands out is you do very luckily have that visual approach because of the background in in the arts, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Lucy spends a lot of time, and it's great. It's amazing having Lucy's visual artistic background as half of it to kind of make it as sort of visually beautiful as possible. Basically, she spends a lot of time kind of coming up with the kind of vision boards for how we're going to sort of progress and things like that.
Yeah, but it's very uncluttered, which is what I like. It's simple. So I'll give you a really good example. And we talked about this at the pop-up perfumery, where you presented, because you've got 3 perfumes and you had your stand and you had 3 sort of, I want to say they were like resin or rubber columns, but they were transparent, whatever they were. I'm sure you'll tell me specifically what they were, filled with flowers. And they had each of the fragrances on at slightly different heights. And I just thought, that's so clever because
Mm.
it's so impactful visually, but also very simple. So, are you also thinking about the negative space, as it were? Just thinking about how do we present things impactfully without overdoing it? Because I think I would be
Yeah.
terrible at that. Honestly, I would be like throw everything at it. It would look
Yeah.
like a child's collage. It would be awful. You know,
I'm sure it wouldn't. I'm sure it wouldn't. But
it would be very graphic design is my passion. If you've seen that meme, that's what it would be.
yeah, no, it kind of that took quite a few stages to even sort of come up with those. They were made of rubber loose. We went to the flower market and we bought fresh flowers, and Lucy made a mold and we filled them with flowers and filled it with um, rubber, which we had to leave to set for a few days before the pop-up. So yeah, I mean, they looked amazing, but they were also kind of, fleeting in the terms of, naturals are in terms of them not lasting forever. So I think it takes a lot of sort of thought to try. Yeah, like you said, the negative space is kind of what we're kind of aware of in terms of we don't want it to be too obvious or too serious as well, if you know what I mean. Because sometimes things can appear a bit too pretentious. We want them to be kind of evocative, but also interesting and textural to kind of line up with the sense, but not so impactful that they detract from the sense, if you know what I mean. It's kind of a
Yeah,
fine balance.
it's a real fine balance, isn't it? And I think it's one that you do well. I like the idea almost of the ephemeral nature of that display because I suppose it allows you to rethink things. You'll be at Barnes Fragrance Fair. I personally have high expectations for how that's going to be presented. So, but that does it. It means, I suppose, it does mean that you can rethink how you want to do it each
Yeah,
time.
yeah. No, we've done a few now, and we've kind of developed them. Not Barnes. This is our first Barnes, but yeah, we've done a few kind of trade shows or pop up, and they've just been developing and improving as we've gone along. So it's fun to experiment and kind of push things to where we're happiest and where they look great for people to come and see them who haven't heard of NOSU as well. We kind of want them to speak to people who might not know who we are.
Yeah, yeah. You've got to draw people in, haven't you? Because once they smell the perfumes, they'll be interested. But you've got to hook them. And you mentioned just now about experimenting, and I think this is something that you also did at the pop-up perfumery, which was really, really great. Was the cool scented artwork that you had? That this was this beautiful sort of gorgeous woolen piece that smelled like labdanum, and you'd obviously scented it, and I think Lucy had made the woolen art piece. Where did the idea come from for that?
It was kind of Lucy was working on scenting different materials. We were kind of working on a few projects in terms of scenting different things like wax and scenting wool and scenting other wooden and different natural materials. And Lucy was working with the wool and these wax pieces, and it kind of just happened that I remembered a story of how they used to collect labdanum resin from cistus plants, where sheep and goats would kind of graze among the cistus plants and be covered in the cistus slash labdanum resin. It's the same material basically. And they'd go back to the shepherds, and then they'd have the resin removed from their wool and sort of processed into resin for perfumery. So it was quite. This was hundreds of years ago. I don't think anyone does this now. People might, I don't know. But and labdanum being a component of the sort of classical sheepfur family, I thought, why not amp up the labdanum, add in some wool absolute, which is a kind of unusual natural material, kind of a byproduct from the wool industry, and add in some oud and some other animalics and give it an extra kind of sheepy feel. And there you have a sheepfur with an S.
Okay, everybody give Jacob an applause for his pun. So, if you're wondering why I'm not, applauding that in the way that I should be, because it is a good pun, is that on Instagram, mostly daily, my DMs are filled with perfume puns from
Yeah,
Jacob. So,
yeah.
I just want you to put that as the context because you might be sitting there thinking, what an ungracious host I am. But
Why?
you have to understand this is my life now.
Yeah, no, I do. I think, whimsy is fun, I think wordplay is
Whimsy
fun.
is fun. It is fun, and it's a
Yeah,
very good pun, and also a really, really cool story because it's evocative, but also is teaching us about the origins of perfumery and where some of our
mm,
materials come from and how people used to do it back in the day. And I think that's
mm.
really, really interesting. Are you ever tempted with something like that to think, oh, do you know what, that perfume would be great? Do you think it has a life outside of that artwork,
People
or is
were
it a one and done?
asking about whether they could buy it as a perfume,
Mm.
and I said no. Um,
Okay.
but only because I think I kind of like the idea of it, but it's kind of it works well on the wool because I built it in a certain way that it was kind of super base heavy, whereas on skin it would be super base heavy and wouldn't really project. So I might have
Yeah.
to like rework it. It also
Yeah.
has like Hindi oud in it, which is extremely expensive. So
Mm.
I'd probably
Yeah.
have to
You'd
figure
have to
that out.
tinker. Yeah.
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 Um, but maybe. I don't know. Possibly. Who knows?
Out of the people that asked you for that fragrance, was one of them called Sue? So that you had to say, no, Sue, we can't,
No.
we can't sell that perfume.
I
Okay,
wondered where that
fine.
was going. No,
Yeah,
no,
no.
no.
Okay, fine. I will be here all week. Um, is that something that you want to do more of, though? Do you think this artistic element of making fragrance into something different? So I know you're going to do something at Barnes for our Scent and Sound
Yeah.
talk. Is that something that you're wanting to do more of, or is it just a very much an organic, if the moment fits, that's what we'll do because we can?
Yeah, no, we do kind of want to expand into different things as well, not just, direct perfumery. I did an exhibition last year, which I made a scent for. Well, there was an exhibition that I made a scent for, which was based around kind of concrete and clay. And yeah, I would definitely like to do more scents for spaces and kind of, I'm not sure in terms of different ways, I'd quite like to do galleries and shows, Theatre would be quite fun to do scents for.
Yeah,
But yeah, in terms of kind of mixtures of visual art that Lucy makes as well. Yeah, we're working on some ideas for that as well.
yeah. I think it's great. I think it's people are there's such an interest in it. I think people
Mm,
really want to experience new things, and I think smell has been really underused in the arts. I know we
yeah,
have every 5 years or so someone will do a big exhibition of like smell
yeah,
and things like that, but it feels like, but actually, why in a gallery of paintings can't there be a scented painting as there were as at
yeah,
the, and Mabel did some beautiful scented
yeah.
paintings. You think, why can't that be more of the norm? So it'd be really interesting to see more of that across different mediums.
No, yeah.
Speaking of more, when can we have some more NOSU perfumes, please? What's next? What's the
Um,
plan?
there are obviously I'm making something for Barnes for
Mm.
which we'll know more about unless you want to discuss it, but we don't have to. But that's what's coming up next. That's going to be a very limited edition, sort of 100 travel size bottle thing for Barnes and for the event. But in terms of full releases, still working on a couple which are going to come out this year.
Okay.
Um, yeah, still top
Okay.
secret,
Yep.
but hopefully, I'm going to say at least one in the summer, hopefully two across the summer. They're not going to be released
Okay.
at the same time. They'll be sort of released separately.
Okay. And that's good. The
Yeah.
good thing is you can take your time and release them when they're ready and when you're ready. I suppose
Yeah, I was
there's
I
no
was
pressure.
trying to make one of them ready for Barnes, but then I didn't want to rush it. I didn't want to kind
No,
of not have it finalized. I wanted to get it into the perfect place, and you know, yeah, yeah.
that's the right
Why
approach.
rush
There's always
things?
next year for Barnes, isn't there?
Exactly, exactly.
You can
We'll
have
have
more.
two more for that time instead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm really, really excited for that, and I'm sure that those will be great. So, no pressure, I suppose.
Mm. Mm.
Um, my last question, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, and I'm not going to apologise. Obviously, as we've discussed, you love a pun. Please give me your best perfume pun.
Oh, I mean, that is difficult. That is a difficult one. I love them all equally. I think I'm obviously a fan of the sheep pun, hence me
Yeah,
sort
that
of
is a good
focusing on
one.
it quite heavily.
Yeah.
But also, I like to be an optimist. Maybe the best perfume pun is still yet to come.
Wow.
So I'll I'll fouge err on the side of caution and say I haven't heard it yet.
Oh, God. I was just going to say what a cop out, and then you did give us a bit of a payoff there.
No, but I mean,
So
there's 2 minutes. There's 2 minutes,
applause for
isn't it?
that. Let's do it. I
Thank
mean,
you.
the fougere on the side of caution is pretty good. I would say.
Thank you. Thank
I'm
you.
pleased with that. You have left the people
Uh,
suitably satisfied.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks.
well, on that note, I'll let you go. But thanks so much for taking the time to speak to me, Jacob. It's been really
Thank you.
great, and I look forward to seeing what you and Lucy do in the future.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much.
NOSU is such an interesting brand. I love how Jacob and Lucy are bringing the senses together to create truly fascinating art. You should absolutely check out their fragrances. You can find them on their website, nosuparfum.com, or in person in the UK at Parfum La Danse or Roulier White in London, or at Scented in Glasgow. You can also find them on Instagram at nosuparfum. I suggest you give them a follow and DM Jacob your favourite scent-related puns. I know that he would appreciate that. A massive thank you to Carium, our sponsor for this episode. I'm all about making fragrance and fragrance discovery more accessible, and Carium's innovative AI solution, the Scent Sommelier, offers an entirely new way to explore fragrance by translating scent into language, and you can find out more at carium.com. Now, if you're heading to Barnes Fragrance Fair this Saturday, the 16th of May, I might see you there. I will be hosting a wonderful scent and sound talk alongside my previous guest, Hayden Williams. As we've talked about today, Jacob has created a very special scent just for that, so do pop along. Tickets are still available. I might also see you on one of the 2 How to Talk About Scent workshops I'm hosting with Carium. Those are both sold out, but if you manage to snag a ticket, I will see you there. Just to plug some of the other talks that still have tickets available, Hayden will also be hosting a fantastic style and scent panel with guests like man for himself, Robin James. If you've been listening to this season, you'll know all about Robin. Content creator Jimmy Okotunji, aka Aroma J, and the image coach and menswear stylist Phil Tarling. Joe Fairley will be hosting a panel all about creating your own fragrance brand, taking it from dream to bottle. And the one, the only Alice Duparc has a panel all about scents for self-care. Both of those promise to be amazing. So for more information and any tickets, please head to barnesfragrancefair.com. Just as a reminder, the fair is actually free to go to. You can go to the fair for free, but if you want to go to any of the talks or workshops, you'll need a ticket, and you can buy those at barnesfragrancefair.com. Hopefully I will see you there. As usual, I'll hand over to our guests to tell us the fragrance they have an emotional connection with. After all, fragrance is an emotional art form. If you want to follow me on Instagram, you can at Making Sense Makes Sense. But for now, over to Jacob. I'll see you next week.
A fragrance I have an emotional connection with is very nostalgic for me. I used to wear Chanel Blue. Very classic. I know it's kind of a little bit done, but I can't go through an airport without spraying it on. It kind of reminds me of being 20 and just, living free and kind of a sunny sort of 20-year-old self.